housekeeping. Here it is.
Use that.
All right, so if you will all make sure that your cell phones are silenced in some manner, either off or on vibrate, we would much appreciate that. Also, there are at the back of the room, and I believe Randy McKay is going to be chapter, I guess is what I would say, topic that pertains to those chapters. And please fill this out, and they will make sure and get that up to us so that you public. And if you have to do so within a reasonable time frame. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And Scott, I give you the floor.
Madam President, Commissioners, we're having a little technical, there we go. All right, awesome. Thanks, Justin. So, is this on? Okay. I was told to speak up. So, my honor to present to you this afternoon the 2016 season-setting proposals from the department. And with that, I'll just kick it off. Perhaps. And I did not have coffee for lunch. Okay, there we go. Okay, so just a kind of a summary slide on process here. Again, Director Talbot had mentioned this during his report, but this truly is a year-round effort of our field managers. It's not just a get-together meeting weeks before they have to produce a season recommendation. It's a year-round activity, and I think that's really important because our field managers constantly work to address local issues, be responsive to our hunting public, and it's reflected in a lot of, as Director Talbot said, a lot of hours and a lot of meetings to come up with these proposals. Specifically, after the hunting season, we kick it off in November and December with informational meetings, and we do that. The timing of that is really crucial because the past hunting seasons are still fresh in everyone's mind. So we like to poll the public at our local meetings to get their input. And in addition, year-round we meet with landowners, non-governmental organizations, sportsmen's groups, sportsmen individually. So it is truly a year-round activity. In addition to the one-on-one or the group meetings, we also do take advantage of other information, specifically attitude surveys. We do have statewide attitude surveys we can draw on specifically for elk and mule deer. And a lot of the regions also conduct their own surveys to get the local opinions of how we could better manage their resources. So as we go through this today, you'll see summary slides of ongoing issues, issues that were brought up at the time of the public information meetings, and those will be reflected on each of the chapters. So with that, if we look at our traditional open house public meeting formats for 2016, here's a summary across the state. You can see a total of 44 meetings were held. 661 folks signed the roster sheets, and we actually received 115 written comments. Those numbers, if you compare them to last year, are pretty similar as far as attendance and total meetings held. Actual written comments from these meetings was down slightly, probably 10 to 20%. And the next slide, I think, will kind of give us an insight as to why some of our written comments from meetings has dropped over the last 2 years. If you recall, 2 years ago, 2015 was the first time we took online comments for these various regulations we're going to talk about today. So we did a quick comparison to look at this year, the 2016 timeframe versus 1 year ago. And down in the lower left-hand corner, you see in 2015 we had approximately 4,800 visits to the public meeting page on our website. This year, we had a phenomenal response. We had over 11,000 people actually visit and look at the information we had on regarding, this public season setting process. Looking at, then it just breaks it out between general hunting, our Chapter 2 regulations, and the various species. You can see for 2016, we had about a little over 200 comments. So even though we had 11,000 visits, only slightly more comments than we had last year. A lot of people interested in our information, but we're not getting a huge number of additional comments based on at least the first year's results. So some interesting trends there, though. Major themes for 2016, if I had to categorize them, and it's tough because it's highly variable across the state. But if we look and summarize statewide, obviously elk harvest, hunter satisfaction remains very high. We still have some very robust elk populations, very, as you'll see later, fairly high success of our elk hunters, and a lot of satisfaction there from the hunting public. Conversely, there's still a concern with the trends of our moose populations. You've probably read the comments in your notebooks, and that's one point I need to make. I need to back up. You have received every written comment that we have had submitted to us in your notebook. So that's an important point to emphasize, is that there's a lot of effort that goes into capturing public comments, and we wanted to make sure every single one of those is captured in your notebooks for your review. On the bright side, fawn production and survival appears to be improving. We've had 3 consecutive years of good moisture and good overwinter survival, particularly pronghorn and deer, both whitetail and mule deer. And you'll see that reflected in some of the license allocation proposals this afternoon, as Director Talbot mentioned. Positive increases in limited quota license proposals for both pronghorn, mule deer, and whitetail deer. With that said, there's still sportsmen's interest to have conservative seasons remains. Everyone seems pleased at this point in time with the increases we're seeing on the ground, but yet there is support for continued conservative management of that resource as well, and I think it's very appropriate. And lastly, large numbers of elk in some areas of the state continue to provide management challenges, damage situations, landowner concerns with large numbers of elk inhabiting private properties. On the converse, there's also areas where the public and our field managers are concerned with the effects of predation on some of our smaller elk herds in localized situations. So it's kind of a balance there. Some areas we have too many elk, other areas we like to manage for more. So that's kind of the general overview. So the first chapter I'd like to talk about today is Chapter 2. These are our general hunting regulations, and these are the proposed changes, the major proposed changes for 2016. So you see here we have 4 identified for discussion this afternoon. And as you recall, last year we had a discussion about the prohibition of spotting or locating big game, and particularly big game from aircraft/drones. The proposal you have in front of you we'll talk about here in the next slide. This prohibition is recommended between August 1st and January 31st of the following calendar year. A second change to the Chapter 2 is after the initial drawing for our licenses, we're proposing to allow the purchase of additional full-price antlerless elk licenses, and these are type 4s and 5s. And you have a chart there in the front of your packet as I start talking about all these different license types. If you want to refer to that, it lists each license type 1 through 9 and what actually that license type is valid for. Thirdly, we deleted the definition of archery equipment from Chapter 2. It was redundant. We already have that located in Chapter 32, and Chapter 32, if you recall, is our chapter dealing with firearms and archery equipment. And then lastly, we added the definition of conservation order due to the combination of waterfowl regulations, specifically chapters 39 and 48. We combined those into one regulation. Everything is now housed under chapter 14. So we needed to, since we proposed to delete those two chapters, we needed to capture that definition in our general hunting regulation, chapter 2. So those are the four major changes proposed for chapter 2. I'd like to go into a little more detail on that first one then. So last year, if you recall, we had this discussion about chapter 2, section 12, and section 12 specifically deals with the use of aircraft to spot or locate wildlife. And the issue centered around, we were receiving increased complaints from concerned sportsmen, the public in general, about their concern on the use of aircraft to locate game animals. Issues centered around ethics, fair chase, the harassment, the direct harassment of wildlife from aircraft, and at times interference with sportsmen's hunts with lawful licensed hunters. So based on that public input, we've done a lot of outreach. We've talked to many, many people, and we propose some new language in section 12 of chapter 2. And I won't read the current language, but I wanted to let you read, and we'll briefly talk about the key points of this proposed new language. And then it's that lower box there in your notebook. So the new language states, no person shall use any aircraft with the intent, and again, intent is bolded and underlined specifically because that's very important to the new language. So with the intent to spot, locate, and aid in the taking of any game animal from August 1st to January 31st of the following calendar year. And then it goes on to state, nothing in this section shall apply to the operation of an aircraft in the usual manner where there is no attempt, and again, or intent, to locate any game animals such as aircraft used for the sole purpose of passenger transport. So again, the main difference here in this new language versus the current language is the emphasis on intent to spot and locate and take game animals. Trying to emphasize that there has to be intent under this new proposed language. So with that, that concludes the major changes of chapter 2. And I would open it up, Madam President, for any discussion or public comment.
Thank you, Scott. I'm a little remiss in that I want to make sure the commission understands how we're going to do this. So they're going to present each chapter, and we're going to have opportunity to discuss on it, and then we'll vote on each chapter as we go along, just in case there were any questions in that regard. Thank you. We do have 4 people who have blue slips up here to discuss Chapter 2, 3 of them very specifically on this section. But what I would ask of you commissioners is, would you like to ask a few questions of Scott first, or would you like to, or is your preview to hear, go ahead and hear the public speakers? Andy?
I'd prefer to hear the public speak on this, and then it'll give Scott a chance to answer or correct, any of the questions at the same time. But we may have a question on it.
All right, that works for me, and hearing nobody to the contrary, then I would give the first speaker we have is Mr. Hendry. He has down here that he is a landowner, and I believe we heard from him in terms of that, or heard about him in terms of that, but it is also my understanding that you are a Natrona County Commissioner as well. So thank you for being here.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, and Director Talbot, my name is Rob Hendry. I'm a third-generation rancher west of town. Along with my wife and 2 kids, we run that ranch today, and they'll be the 4th generation on that ranch, and they're working it right now. You know, this was brought to my attention a couple of months ago, and that's why I really haven't commented before now. But in our ranch, the main thing is the elk hunting, and we allow hunting out there. We've always allowed it. We run in 3 big areas, elk hunting areas. The first area is Area 120. We own and control kind of the heart of Area 120, but we allow hunting. I mean, we do have a charge, and it's not very much, $250 to hunt a bull elk, and you can go anywhere you want. We provide a hunting camp and outhouses, and we haven't ever locked the gates, so to speak. So there's a big area out there to hunt, and it's a pretty popular area. In Area 48, we also have a lot of country in Area 48. Well, in 120, I'll tell you, it's probably 20,000 acres that we have in that area that we own or control. In Area 48, it'd be pretty close to the same, 20,000, something like somewhat difficult because the area elk stay kind of in our place. And if they don't get kicked out of that area, they're pretty tough for the regular hunter to go hunt. So there's a little bit of a problem there. There's kind of a refuge. In Area 23 is on the west end of the rattlesnakes, and it's somewhat the same way. After the first week or 2, the elk run into a refuge, and they really don't get kicked out of there. It's tough to hunt. I'm also a pilot. I fly not only for the ranch, but I fly for the Sheriff's Department. I've flown for the Game and Fish a little bit, donated my time. And so I fly a lot. During hunting season, we're shipping 4 bunches of cattle right during hunting season. And we're in the air every morning. And we fly Cessna 182, a Super Cub, and a helicopter. And depending on what we're doing that day is what I pick the machine. The helicopter, we've been using that to help gather cattle. And I'm right on the ground, literally right on the ground, helping gather. If we're using the 182, I'm somewhat higher, but I'm looking for cattle that we missed, and I can tell my guys where they were. So the rule of the way it is originally, it works very good for us, where I'm not really spotting wildlife, but I also see wildlife when we're gathering those pastures. So if we have a hunter that has paid the $250 to hunt, in-state, out-of-state, doesn't matter to us. If they call me up that night, I like to be able to say, yeah, I saw a bunch of elk in that pasture today, or I saw them on this ridge. And if I saw them in the morning and they're going to go the next morning, that meets the 24 hour. And it just gives them an idea of where the elk were. At least they're in that country. They know that they were in that area. So it gives them a little bit of a heads up. In those areas that the elk run into, like in 48, sometimes I go away when we're gathering the cattle. I'll go away from our land, and I will go make a swing down around to find out if the elk are out of those areas. And if they're out of that area, then I can tell those people that night that, yeah, they're moved out of there, and you'll probably have a pretty good chance of getting an elk if you come out. But if they don't have that information, it's just a day of driving around, basically. So it helps the hunters, and it helps us get somewhat of manage that wildlife, get some numbers down. It'd be nice if those elk stayed on those different places all year round, but they don't. They go in there during hunting season, and then they come back on the rest of us when it's not hunting season, so we get to feed them also. I'll tell you, we don't have a problem with elk numbers. There used to be a lot more elk out there, and I think there is now. We used to have 300 or 400 in each of those areas on us, and now we don't have that many. So we don't have a big problem. But boy, I just don't want to be a lawbreaker, you know? And to say that I can't even look up there for wildlife between August 1st and January 31st, boy, that's pretty onerous. But I understand that there's some problems. You know, the predator, and up there it says, except for predators, in the second sentence on the current language. Well, down below, I think you can kind of put predator control in there, but it's a little different. And then no attempt or intent. Well, for your wardens out there, proven intent might be a little problematic too. But, you know, the bottom line is, I think if you pass something like this, I'm going to adhere to it. I'm not going to break the law, but I am going to be in the air. And I think you're going to get a lot of phone calls and a lot of speculation that I'm up there spotting wildlife. And I just think it's pretty problematic. What I might suggest to you, because in some areas you do have a problem, and you know you have a problem, and I understand that. You've worked long and hard on these regs. But you might make under Section 12, you might have a Section 12A and a Section 12B. Section 12A would be the language that exists now. And then Section B would be at the discretion of the department or at the discretion of the commission. You could instigate or do the rules as the proposed language would. So that if you knew you had an area that you had a specific problem in, then the department could say, well, in this area, we're going to go to Section B and use those rules. Something like that. But I just hate the fact that if you have problems in one area, then the rest of us all pay the price. And I will tell you, there is a difference between flying over our country with a helicopter and flying over with a 182. The helicopter does, the game does move, so you got to be careful that you're high enough if you're looking around. In a 182, they're so used to us, they barely look up. Literally, just barely look up. They don't, it doesn't affect them at all. So that's why I would say that we ought to have different standards in different areas. But I would stand for any questions if there was any from the commission, and I appreciate the time.
Commissioner Crank.
Commissioner Hendry, can you more specifically articulate or tell me why you think this regulation would prohibit anything you described? You know, and what you described, what I heard was, I fly most every day in the fall in my ranching operation, and along the way I notice wildlife, and if someone calls me, I'll tell them what I know. And so how do you believe this proposed regulation as it's written now would make that conduct illegal or cause you trouble?
I like the fact that the 24 hours is in there, in the way it was, the current language. The other way is that if I go off over the neighbor's place where they do have the elk kind of harbored, so to speak, if I fly over his place, and I stay pretty high, if I'm not chasing cows around over our land, I stay pretty high. But you can still see them. If I go over there and find out that they're still on that place and that they are not across the fence on ours, and I tell somebody about it, I think I was actually going over there to spot wildlife. So, boy, that's a gray area, but
Well, Madam President, let me be your lawyer. That's what I do for a living.
please, I may need one.
And make sure you get his fees.
If one of our red-shirted guys was silly enough to charge you with that in that situation, my argument would be is you didn't fly over the neighbor's land to aid with the intent to aid in the taking of any wildlife. In fact, your actions would lead to not taking wildlife, because if I have permission to hunt on your land and I call you that night, you're going to say, hey, I flew it today and there's nothing on us in Area 48. So I'd make the argument that really you hadn't violated this regulation whatsoever.
That's true, but at the same time, if I see them that they're not over there and I follow the tracks or something in the snow and find out they are on our place and I say, well, they're on this ridge, then it would. And I'll tell you, our family, we were just talking about it. We've got a couple of ranches out there in different names and different stockholders. So we gave 10 licenses to hunting for heroes last year, all together, elk, deer, and antelope. You know, to have those guys come out to our country and get an elk or something, if I can, I'm not going to fly over the top of them and say, go over that hill, they're right there. But if I can tell them that, you know, they were up there on that ridge and we probably have 4 or 5 other hunters in that pasture and, you know, they may not see them. So if I can help those guys some way to get an elk or the elk is the main thing. They're kind of on their own on the deer and antelope. But if I can help them do that, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hendrick.
We can recall. Did you
What?
have another question? All right, next speaker on this is Buzz Hedrick? Okay, and from the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers.
Yes. So, Madam President, members of the commission, Director Talbot, BHA kind of started this project to try to get this changed probably about 2.5 years ago. And the main reason why we want to change this is that, you know, it is all about the ethics and fair chase of hunting. It's called hunting, not killing, and not shooting. And there should be a certain amount of work that goes into that. And I just believe that, and so does our group, that, you know, to maintain those ethics, you know, you should be out there on your feet doing this thing and not out there flying around in an airplane spotting this stuff. And one of the big reasons, too, is I've got 3 personal stories to share about how this aircraft use does impact legal hunting. I have a friend from Montana, Greg Munther. He's a bow hunter, primarily hunts with a longbow. And he applied here for 19 years to draw a sheep tag. He was hunting in Area 5. And he went out and all he does is archery hunt, so he didn't rifle hunt at all. And he goes out there and has 3 stalks blown by aircraft. That's a long time to wait to have people flying over you and chasing the sheep into the rocks when you're trying to kill them with a longbow. Had another friend, and to say that this isn't a widespread problem across the state is just not true either. Another really good friend of mine, Randy Hodges from Montana, drew an antelope permit in right there by Rock Springs. And he actually has photographs that I can email to you of a guy flying over all the antelope herds out there, checking out all these herds for big bucks while he's out there trying to hunt as a non-resident hunter. These people have put a major commitment into time, preference points, all this other stuff, trying to draw these tags, and then this kind of stuff happens. And then the last one is myself. I drew a moose tag in Unit 24 last year, and on my hunt, I saw airplanes fly in the Wyoming range every single morning that you could fly. Every morning during the mule deer season. They weren't specifically looking for moose, but they were definitely looking for deer. There's no doubt in my mind that's what they were doing. And the other thing to consider too is this is not just about airplanes and helicopters, there's also drones to consider. And I think that the drones can be used to harass hunters as well, or an illegal hunt. And since drones are now under the definition of aircraft, I think that's another big consideration we have to think about too. It's not just airplanes and helicopters. And I guess I'd like to thank the department for working with us on this. It was great. Mike Choma and Brian Nesvik in particular helped us out a lot on this, and we appreciate those efforts. And I would stand for any questions.
Commissioner?
Buzz, do you have any Commissioner Hendry makes, I guess, if I were going to summarize his argument, what is otherwise innocent behavior on his part could result in a criminal prosecution of an innocent person. I mean, he doesn't, as he describes his behavior, he's not out there looking for specific animals with the intent to aid in the taking of that animal. As a rancher, he supplies information to people who ask. And it seems to me it's not much different whether he was on a horse or he's in his airplane. If, I've, for my whole life hunting in Wyoming, if a rancher will talk to me, I'm going to ask him where the heck the elk are, or the deer are, or where he's been seeing them, or where the pheasants are, where the geese are landing. And that's innocent behavior, and it's something I think we want to encourage. So is there any change you see with this proposed language that would protect the kind of innocent behavior that Commissioner Hendry describes versus what may be totally illegal behavior of someone flying the Wyoming range looking for the world record mule deer and then deliberately going in there the next day and killing that world record mule deer? I think that's what we all want to prohibit, but are there any changes you can propose to this that would solve Mr. Hendry's problem?
Madam President, Commissioner Crank, I think, again, it just comes down to intent, and I would argue again that it's called hunting and not killing. I mean, I feel like as a hunter, if I have to resort to get in an airplane to find an elk to kill in Wyoming, I'm not very much of a hunter, and I don't ask those questions. I go out there and hunt on public land. I don't hunt on private very often. I do hunt access, yes, property and things like that, but I don't really hunt on private land. And again, it's intent. If it was me, I would tell Mr. Hendry that if you're up there with the intent of flying over the neighbor's place to find elk to report to somebody, you're in violation of the law. I mean, that's what the law says, with the intent of looking for game. And what you can't, and where do you draw the line? I mean, that's the other thing. We've got rifles now that, shooting 5, 6, 7, 800 yards is not a problem. You got, I own probably $6,000 worth of glass that I can sit and it's damn near like looking through the Hubble Space Telescope, with good Swarovski optics. I mean, where do you draw the line on ethics? And I just feel like this is where we need to draw the line. And I don't know how you specifically, again, address this. If you're up there just looking for your cows and things like that, I don't have any problem with that. It's when you're up there with the intent to locate and spot game. It's just a matter of whether you believe in ethics or in fair chase hunting or not.
Thank you for your comments.
If there are no other questions, I want to thank you, Mr. Hetrick, for speaking today. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And the next speaker is Jeff Murator. Muratori. I butchered that, boy, didn't I? He is also from Backcountry Hunters and Anglers.
Madam Chairman, members of the Commission, Director Talbot, thank you for letting me speak here. I am a member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, but when I started getting involved with Mike Choma on this particular regulation, I wasn't a member. I became a member along the way, but I guess what I want to say here is I do support this, fully support it, and I want to commend Mike for his hard work on trying to make this regulation what it is, and that's, it focuses on people who fly with the intent to spot and locate game animals for the purpose of hunting. And I fully support that, and I do want to say, I have actually hunted on the Hendry's Ranch in the past, paid that trespass fee and gone in there, and not one time have I ever gotten advice from Rob where the elk were, my friends or family, and we always were able to find them with regular binoculars, and I mean, that's what hunting's all about to us. To use an aircraft to find the game just doesn't quite seem right. But and that's all I have to say.
Commissioners, questions for Mr. Muratori?
Thank you.
Seeing none, I want to thank you very much for speaking.
Thank you.
And Steve Kilpatrick of the Wyoming Sportsman Alliance also wants to speak on Chapter 2. I'm not sure exactly which point, but this one, okay.
Madam Chairman, members of the Commission, Director Talbot, I'm Steve Kilpatrick, and speaking on behalf of the Wyoming Sportsman's Alliance. That's a group of 8 sportsman groups across the state. I'll list them quickly. Backcountry Hunter and Anglers, who you just heard from, Wyoming Backcountry Horsemen, Bow Hunters of Wyoming, Muley Fanatic of Wyoming, Wyoming Wildlife Federation, Wyoming Wild Sheep Foundation, Wyoming Federation of Union Sportsmen, and Yellowstone Country Bear Hunters Association. We've all discussed and talked about this on our monthly conference calls, and we would like to support the change that Game and Fish has put forward. And the guiding principle is just ethics and fair chase. We just believe with all the things we have as humans to harvest wildlife these days, from night vision scopes to long-range shooting rifles to four-wheelers to Gore-Tex to hand and toe warmers and silencers, we just think we have a pretty good advantage right now, and we often wonder, laughed over the phone about how the heck did our dad and grandparents put on a pair of blue jeans, cowboy boots, maybe they had a wool shirt, probably was flannel, and they harvested stuff. So how much more advantage do we need? And we certainly don't need this, especially with it results in drones and so forth. So with that, I'd like to offer our support of the way it's written, and I do hear Mr. Henry's concerns, and my thoughts are fairly similar to Buzz Hedrick's. That's why the Game and Fish hires good wardens, is to sort through things and figure out what the intent is, and I think they do that very fair. They do it very well. If there's an intent to do something wrong, I'm sure they're going to write a citation. If there was no intent, they've had discretion in the past, and I hope they continue to have discretion on whether they write a ticket or not, and that might be what they have to do here, unless we can find a better solution. With that, I'll take questions.
Questions? If not, thank you, Mr. Kilpatrick.
Thank you for your time.
I don't have any other blue slips in front of me from the public on this particular topic. So going once, twice, back to Scott, so we would take any discussion from the commission.
Okay.
Commissioner
Discussion from,
Price.
what we're kind of doing is we got kind of a difficult place. We're splitting hairs in a way here. On one side, Mr. Henry is, kind of a casual observation type thing, and I think Pat hit on it. If a rancher comes out, and then somebody comes and asks him, well, where's the elk today? Well, he'll say, well, I saw him over that hill there. And I think that's pretty common. Or they may drive into your place and ask, they get permission to hunt and say, you got any deer down on the river or something like that, or a moose. And I've had experience with particularly moose hunters on the Green River, because I have some Green River in the property. And I can tell when there's a big moose on that property, because there's planes are buzzing it pretty regular. And then I'll get phone calls, could I come and hunt on your property? I'll ask them, I said, did you fly that and look, see that moose? Well, but there's a casual thing. The other thing that we see as you read these letters and stuff that we've been having in there some people making a profession out of stalking, large animals, trophy-type animals there, and actually spending a considerable amount of time and effort and effectively almost just setting on those animals. In fact, some indication is that they are. And they're, definitely, this would take care of that. Now, I think what Mr. Henry wants to do is kind of clear his conscience just a little bit on that. If he sees an elk and says, yeah, I saw an elk over on that second ridge over while I was chasing the cows there. Like I say, we're kind of splitting hairs here, but I'm going to say that the people that are using the aircraft illegally to set on the elk or the deer or the mountain sheep, the bighorns, stuff like that, goats, something we have to do something about that. And there was a suggestion, I think Mr. Henry made this suggestion, that maybe we could give the supervisors of a district the authority to make a decision if they're asked about that. Well, maybe they don't want that. I don't know. But these are some things that have gone through my mind as I've listened to this. And I particularly don't like the idea of the trophy hunters setting on a trophy animal and then harvesting it. Because if you can get it within 500 yards of any animal with a good rifle and a scope, you can almost get it. I mean, it's almost yours.
Scott, I was wondering if, did I cut you off? No. Okay, thank you. Scott, I was just wondering, since Commissioner Price has brought up those questions and several of the speakers did, if there was anything that you would like to respond from the Game and Fish in that regard.
Not specifically at this point, Madam President.
Okay. Any other discussion from the Commissioner Craig? Sorry.
Scott, when's our drop dead date by when we need to amend or not amend Chapter 2?
As far as the schedule, let me.
Yeah, I think we need to make a decision today on these regulations.
Gotta make a decision today.
Madam President, if I could, I'd like to introduce Mike Chomo, who's been involved in this this revision quite a bit. And Mike, as far as timing, could you answer Commissioner Craig's question?
And let me play my cards. As I read this language, and I don't think this criminalizes what Commissioner Hendry said he does. I don't believe that if he did anything that he's described today, he should be charged with a crime. Maybe I'm not the most ethical of hunters or gatherers in my life, but I will tell you that 99% of the chuckers I ever killed was because I became friends with a sheep herder north of Powder River and bought him a fifth of whiskey every time I went out there. And he kept track of the chuckers for me. Now he didn't do it with an airplane, but he certainly did it on foot. And I just think that stuff happens every day. And I am, so I can read this language, and I don't think it criminalizes anything Commissioner Hendry says he does. But, two very passionate sportsmen who I like and respect believe that would be criminal under this statute. And I'm very hesitant as exercising what authority I have as a commissioner of the Wyoming Game and Fish to criminalize what I believe is innocent conduct or put people in harm's way. If that division of opinion is out there, we throw our wardens in harm's way. I mean, they're going to have to make that judgment call. I think it's easy if someone flies the Wyoming range and you get a tail number off a plane, and the next morning they have 4 horses headed in, and that afternoon they kill a world record mule deer in the area where someone observed their tail number flying. You know, that's pretty easy for me as an old prosecutor to say they flew with the intent to take an animal, and they should be prosecuted and thrown in jail as far as I'm concerned for doing that. But, you know, a rancher or someone who's flying, you know, I have friends with planes. They're flying between here and Cheyenne and, you know, say, you know, wow, I saw 100 head of elk on the Y-Cross Ranch. You know, their intent is not to take an animal. They're supplying information, you know. And if I go out there the next day, if I have permission to hunt on the Y-Cross Ranch and kill an elk, I don't think I'm guilty of aiding and abetting flying illegally, or I don't think the person who told me who happened to be flying over is guilty. But so I'm hesitant to criminalize innocent conduct, and I'm afraid, I don't read it in here, but there's an opinion out there that what to me is totally innocent conduct is being criminalized. So I'm troubled by the regulation. So that's why I ask the question, can we study this a little bit more? Can we clear up this language a little bit? Is there a way to, and I know you guys have worked your behinds off on this for a long time, and it's been a lot of public comment, but you know, if that's the idea out there, I think we throw our wardens in harm's way because they don't know exactly what the law prohibits and doesn't. The public may believe some conduct's illegal and it may not be. You have prosecutors out there are going to have to decide, is this a violation too or not? So I'm troubled by the public comment we received today.
Mr. Nesbitt.
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Crank, I think I can address some of those issues, and I think you've done a good job of highlighting a lot of the discussion we had internally, because exactly what you just said is what we were trying to attempt to prevent when we came up with language. We had a lot of discussion about, you know, what if we had an exemption for ag practices? We actually discussed specifically Commissioner Hendry's situation. And we started kind of going down that road, and we thought, you know, actually that doesn't work, because what if Commissioner Hendry flies to the commission meeting in Casper and happens to see elk in the, you know, when he wasn't intending to go out and spot and locate wildlife. And it was through discussions like that. I have a friend in this room who routinely flies in the summertime, who then outfits in the same drainage at a later time. And when he's flying, his intent is not to locate wildlife. He goes with a friend who likes to just go fly that area. And so we had a lot of these discussions, and at the end of the day, the solution we came up with was the language that you see here in front of us. And we also had same discussions with the folks from Buzz and Jeff's group and other groups as well, and the outfitting folks. We talked to them. We're always willing to take these ideas back and discuss it more, but I don't, you know, there's nothing that comes to me today that fixes the concerns that have been brought up or makes this any more clear. The only other thing I would add is that our wardens have several statutes in Title 23 that require them to prove intent, and they understand that. And this is actually a pretty tall bar. I mean, this is difficult to make a case or to prosecute, and you're very well aware of that, Commissioner Crank. So I hear you there too. I think intent is tough. But I guess I don't know another way to skin the cat.
Commissioner Culver.
You know, Commissioner Hendry, thank you for coming here today and visiting, and thanks for what you do for wildlife and the sport of hunting in Wyoming. But in my opinion, if you're herding cows and you see elk, and that's not a violation. If you make a loop over the back 40 with the intent purpose of spotting elk to tell a hunter that night, that is in violation of this proposed regulation. This is not an easy call, but the problem in Wyoming appears to be egregious enough at this point in time. I think this commission needs to take action. And for those reasons, I support this proposed change.
Well, Commissioners, I do think we need to take action on Chapter 2 today. So it will certainly be up to you gentlemen as to whether you feel that the proposed change is in order. And if there isn't any further discussion, I would ask for someone to make a motion.
I'll put it on the floor. I'll make the motion, we accept this change as proposed.
Do I hear a second?
Can I get a clarification on the motion? Are you talking specifically section 12 of chapter
Item
2?
section 12 of chapter 2.
Oh, you're just doing section 12 only.
do the whole
Could
chapter,
we
'cause
just,
the other
The whole
one-
chapter.
do you have a difficulty
Well,
with any other part of
I don't
chapter
have it.
2?
I'll change my motion to accept chapter 2 as proposed. I didn't see any problems in it. I
I'll
got
second
after
All
Mike
right,
for,
so we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Price to accept all the proposed changes by the Game and Fish to Chapter 2, and we have a second from Commissioner Culver. Is there any, I'll give one more opportunity for discussion.
Madam President?
Yes.
You know, this is the classic problem. A few bad apples spoil the whole bunch. So we have people out there illegally and unethically pursuing game. And so we're forced as a commission to try to adopt a regulation to regulate those illegal few that may harm other people like Commissioner Hendry who do stuff that I think is perfectly lawful. So I'm going to vote for this, but I'm noting for the record that I do not believe that if a rancher is flying around and, you know, or if any individual is flying around and in the course of that observes wildlife and subsequently, you know, through no overt action on his part, but when asked, conveys information where he may have seen wildlife, that in my mind, that would not be a violation of this statute. So I'll vote for it and I'll support it because I think we need something on the books to prevent the bad apples from doing this. But, you know, I just want it noted that I'm concerned that we may be criminalizing other otherwise innocent conduct, which troubles me. And I'm afraid that, you know, as an old state and federal prosecutor, you prove intent. We can't look inside someone's head and see what they're thinking at a particular moment. So we prove intent by statements they make and other conduct and other things they do. So we all understand that, and our wardens understand that, and they live in that world every day. But I just, you know, this puts our wardens in a difficult judgment situation. I assume they're up to the challenge because I've known many of them for many years, but this is a statute that we need to be careful with and you know, not harm people who are innocent of truly having the intent to violate the statute by just doing what they do every day.
Duly noted. Commissioner Price, can we?
I made the motion, excuse me, I made the motion to do this, and I wanted to get it out for discussion. And I appreciate Commissioner Hendrick coming up and being right forth with us and explaining his part of the things. And I understand it very well. And I think what we're going to have to do, and I'm going to support this, because I think the problems we have, particularly in the western part of the state, are egregious enough and are separated enough that our personnel, the wardens particularly, it'll be difficult to prove some of the stuff that goes on. And they've got enough integrity, I believe, to make a distinction between a real intent and a casual observation. Thank you.
Seeing no one else wanting to discuss, we have a motion to support the changes proposed to Chapter 2. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Scott,
Madam President, Commissioners, Director Talbot, if I could, we'll now switch to Chapter 5, pronghorn seasons proposed for 2016. So as you see here's a summary of all of our 8 regions across the state by license type and the proposed changes. In general, as we had mentioned before, some of the regions are reflecting this increased productivity and survival over the past 3 years. As you can see here, Laramie, Casper, Cody, and Lander regions all have fairly notable increases proposed in license types, particularly type 1s and type 6s, the any and Dauphin permits. Of interest, Pinedale region on the west side of the Continental Divide over the last 3 years has not seen the same type of increases in productivity. Subsequent, they're actually proposing a slight reduction in all of their license types. Green River has a variety of situations there. Some areas are doing quite well, others of the drier climates, drier habitats are not. So their proposals are listed there. If we look on a statewide basis, then all of our proposals for Chapter 5 for the pronghorn proposal for 2016, as Director Talbot mentioned earlier, we have a total proposed increase of 4,220 licenses statewide. The bulk of those come in Type 2 and Type 7s. Last year's harvest, and I'll show you a graph in just a minute here. Last year's harvest topped 35,600, and hunter success was about 93%, which is reflective of the last 5-year average. So very high success with our pronghorn hunters. So that harvest for 2015, as you can see here, is slightly higher than 2014, but still significantly lower than 2010 when we peaked at almost 60,000 antelope harvested in the state. You can see the effects from 2010 of a very severe winter in the winter of 2010, 2011, and then the continued drought that we had starting really noticing it in antelope productivity in 2010. So we feel like, you know, we're seeing signs of improvement, and we're quite encouraged by those increased productivity reports that we're getting from our field managers. So to summarize statewide comments, concerns, issues, there's still some public land areas, primarily west of the Continental Divide, that folks are still have concerns with low antelope numbers, and that's reflected in the proposed license allocation. Changes subsequent to our public meetings proposed by our field managers, we had 2 of note, one in the Green River region and one in the Sheridan region. And both of these, Area 99 in Green River, Area 15 in Sheridan, both these proposals are to extend days available for hunting. And in the case of Area 99, I'll also add additional licenses. And in both these instances, to address growing antelope numbers on private lands and address crop damage for those 2 areas. So with that, that's a summary of Chapter 5 for pronghorn antelope in the 2016 proposal, and I would offer any
Commissioners,
comments.
any questions for Scott on Chapter 5?
Madam
Hearing,
Chairman,
Commissioner Crank.
remind me, last year, we had a rancher from the Rollins area who showed up, and as I recall, his complaint was that there were far too many antelope on his place, and he was kind of overly burdened by supporting the numbers of antelope, and he wanted some increased licenses, I think Dauphin licenses, to kind of blow those antelope off his place. Did he come forward and have we addressed, and we promised him that we would, even though we couldn't change it last year, that we would think about changing it this year. So have we addressed that, or did he come forward and talk to us? Is it still a problem?
Madam President, I was remiss. So as you see in the back of the room, we have a lot of red shirts, and those are our field supervisors. And I would call on our lander supervisor, Jason Hunter, to answer that question. And I don't have the details for you, Commissioner Crank, but we can get that for you here. Jason?
President Little, members of the commission, Director Talbot. Commissioner Crank, yes, we did. We worked with Mr. Thayer continually, and this year he was very happy with our proposals. We basically doubled the quotas from last year, and we are going to continue to send letters to the successful hunters who draw those Type 7 licenses to get them directed towards him.
Okay. Madam President,
Commissioner Crank.
area 61. What are our numbers doing in 61?
61.
That's near and dear to my heart. I'm just asking.
Yep.
And where are they, by the way, he wants to know?
And 61 is within the
What ridge are they
residential,
on, Jason?
herd unit, and yeah, we are. That's one of the areas, like Scott mentioned, that isn't recovering as quickly as some of the others, and I'm not entirely sure why, but we are still below objective in that herd unit.
The last year you issued how many licenses?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I can look it up, but we're proposing the same number this year.
Same number? Okay.
Yeah, and we're seeing slight increases, but not the rebound we've seen elsewhere.
Excuse me,
Commissioner Anselmi.
following that up, and we've had this discussion the last 2 years, that you got 25 doe licenses out there, and where's that? Where's that at? Where do you figure the problem is with those?
So those are valid area-wide, and we probably don't need to continue those into the future, but we do have some concern in places where landowners would want a little bit of harvest. So we're just maintaining the 25. It's the minimum number.
Commissioners, any other questions for Jason? Keep in mind, you do have all of the regional supervisors, so if you have any questions specific to regions, it's a great time to tap them. No, hearing none, then I would ask for a motion on Chapter 5 and the acceptance of the proposals by the department.
President Little,
Yes, Commissioner Price.
I make the motion that we accept Chapter 5 as presented.
We have a motion to accept as presented, Chapter 5 from Commissioner Price. Any second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Culver.
Call for the question.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. The next area is Chapter 6 for mule deer. So again, same format here. We have the 8 regions from around the state, and these are the changes proposed in limited quota licenses. And as you're aware, we use a combination, unlike pronghorn, where all the licenses issued are limited quota. For deer and elk, we have a combination of limited quota licenses in addition to general licenses that we use to manage these populations. So looking around the regions, you can see we, again, have a variety of proposals. One that jumps out right away is, or several, I guess, are Cody and Lander. In Lander, we have an increase in Type 1, which is the any deer license. And that came about as a result of converting a hunt area from general to limited quota for 2016. That hunt area is 36. So that reflects a quota added to that specific hunt area for 2016 that wasn't available. It was a general season last year. In the Cody area, you'll see an increase of 425 for Type 6 mule deer licenses. Again, that's a tool they're using to address some agricultural damage situations, very specific for certain hunt areas. And then finally, in Casper, you'll see also an increase of about 450 Type 6 licenses. And again, those are targeting the Black Hills area, hunt areas 1, 2, and 3, where we are seeing over the last 3 years a significant growth in deer numbers. Again, if we summarize statewide our changes in limited quota licenses for mule deer, a total of 1,550 more licenses in 2016 is proposed as compared to last year. The 2015 harvest, a little over 28,000 deer, with hunter success averaging this past year at 57%. Very close to the 5-year average. 5-year average of our hunter success for mule deer is running about 55%. If we look at the harvest trends, you can see while we have positive news the last several years, we're still down from 10 years ago when we were killing over 40,000 deer statewide. So improved.
Can you go back one slide? I'm sorry.
Sure. Commissioner Anselmi, happy to.
Thank you.
He's good.
So again, just a 10-year trend line showing the increased productivity and survival of deer the last several years is resulting in not only obviously increased harvest and increased hunter success. This chart here shows the non-resident general license allocation. These are general license allocations by non-resident region. Again, the regions with changes are shown in red. Region A, B, and C propose increased allocation of non-resident general licenses. Region A, an increase of 1,000. The total quota would be 4,500. Region B, an increase of 200 for a total quota of 1,000, and Region C, increase of 100 for a 2,200 total quota. Region, and those are all in the northeast part of the state. And Region M, over in the Cody region, a decrease of 200 for a total quota of 800, and that reduction, as I mentioned just a bit ago, is associated with converting a limited quota hunt area 36 to the general license conversion of area 36 to limited quota. Sorry. So for 2016, we're proposing 17,400 non-resident general licenses for deer hunting in the state. That's an increase of 1,100 over the past year. Themes, concerns, and issues raised around the state during our public information gathering meetings. Let's run through these real quick. As I pointed out earlier in the statewide summary, in the Jackson area, continued support for specifically Wyoming range and sublet the large migratory mule deer herds in western Wyoming. Still strong support for conservative seasons, but we are, and we have been, because these are public land areas, we do hear concerns of hunter crowding in certain trailheads in specific areas. In the Cody area, there was a discussion that we typically have in certain areas of the state about antler point restrictions for select hunt areas. Sheridan, similar to the Jackson discussions, they support conservative seasons. However, overall concern, they'd like to see more deer on the landscape. Down in the southwest corner of the state in Green River, we did hear concern about a proposal for hunt area 82 offering limited number of doe fawn tags and also hunter crowding in the bags area, specifically associated with hunt area 82. In the Pinedale area, We have continued concern about wintering mule deer numbers on the Pinedale anticline. As you recall, that's a large winter complex south of the town of Pinedale. Numbers still lag from 10-plus years ago. They're about 40% lower than they were 10 years ago. Just to wrap it up here, Laramie and Casper. Laramie continues to have some discussion amongst the publics about converting some of the hunt areas to limited quota, converting from a general to a limited quota season. And in the Casper area, continued support for conservative mule deer seasons outside of the Black Hills area. So if we had to summarize statewide, I put this in here covering kind of the statewide perspective. We have opposing views in some areas that were expressed on the proposal to eliminate antlerless deer hunting during the archery season, some for and some against. There was no clear-cut decision there. We are proposing to eliminate antlerless deer hunting during the archery seasons. Changes that we made based on our public meetings. One of note over in the Green River region, we did shorten the season length of the Area 82 Type 6 season to avoid the overlap of the general season with the youth hunt that we're offering for that specific hunt area. As we look at emerging and ongoing issues, several to note here throughout the state. In the Green River region, the public is concerned in some areas, specifically hunt areas 131 and 101, 102, about low deer numbers. And again, the ongoing discussion in that region with hunt area 82 and the proposal for offering 250 doe fawn tags for area 82. In Sheridan, they have a challenge in area 25. We have hunters that have very divergent desires of how to manage that deer herd there, and the field managers there are looking at various ways to address both increasing deer densities on the national forest as well as improving overall buck quality. That's an ongoing or emerging issue that we're going to be addressing as we move forward. In the Laramie region, Sheep Mountain Herd Unit is very popular hunting area, and there's just, as I mentioned earlier, continued discussion for that specific herd about considering a switch from general license to limited quota management. Lander, as we probably could put this for most every region in the state, continued support for maintaining conservative hunting seasons and looking at ways on public lands to address hunter crowding. So with that, I need to let the commission know. I'll look at my notes here. What is that? Okay, we have amendments to make to the current Chapter 6 that we're proposing to make some changes to what you have in your notebooks. Specifically, there's three changes or three amendments we'd like to propose, Madam President. The first one.
Could you give it to us by page number? Would that be possible?
I don't have the page numbers here, but I can get them from my, page 1 is, which one, Mike? Okay, so on page 1, for hunt areas 1, 2, and 3, type 8, proposed to increase the quota from 3,000 to 3,500, an increase of 500 above what you have in your notebooks. Page 8, hunt area 82, type 6. It'll be listed in your notebook as a quota of 500. We would propose to cut that in half propose 250 Dauphin licenses for Area 82 Type 6. And finally, page 13, hunt area 157, 170, type 3. We would propose to increase that to 100. I believe it's 75 in your notebook. We propose to increase it by 25 to a total quota of 100. Those are the three amendments we'd like to propose to Chapter 6 for, specifically for mule deer.
Commissioners, did you all get that? You're good with those changes? And Commissioner Price, I think you had a question.
I got that question answered. I didn't get the last two.
Oh, the last two? So there was page 8.
Eight.
So 6-8, because that was, we're on chapter 6, so 8.
Okay.
And
82, 500 to 250.
thank you. And then, oh wait.
Okay.
And then 13, page 13, and when you're there, it is 157, 170, the type 3 licenses. And that was moving that from 75 to 100, so an increase.
Thank you.
150s.
Any other questions real quick? Commissioner Price, I think you wanted the floor.
Well, I guess I'll ask this question right now. This area 131, wasn't about 2 years ago, we went with 131, 132, 133, and did a 3-point or better?
No.
That-
Was-
Am I wrong on
Was,
that?
what, okay, go ahead.
131's a desert. The sand dunes at North of Rock Springs, 131.
It was, I think if I recall, it was 168, 133, and 132.
Okay, so.
Am I
160
think
okay.
I'm, does the regional supervisor, Steve, is that correct?
Madam President, members of the commission, that is correct. Historically, we've been under a 3-point restriction in Area 132 for several years, and a couple years ago, through public input and request, we put the rest of what people call Region K, Area 133 and 168, in with 132. Area 131 is on the opposite end of the region, and it's been under a 4-point restriction for the last few years in a very short, conservative general deer season. And the license type that I think that we were seeing there, we did at one point have some, and we still do, some 131 Dauphin licenses that are valid in the agricultural areas around Farson and Eden. But the comment here is that there's ongoing concern with the public about the overall population in Area 131, which is the desert area northeast of Rock Springs. So it's not related to 132, 133, and 168 at all. Does that answer your question?
On those, though?
I was just trying to correlate there. I had the 132, but the lines slipped to 131.
Okay,
I
yeah.
will ask the question, how's that working?
How is the point restrictions working? Essentially, the population has been fairly stable throughout that the last several years. We're not seeing any significant changes in buck ratios related to that, and the public in those areas seem to still strongly support these point restrictions to be continued, and so we've not proposed any changes.
Well, and as I read your report in regard to that, you felt that the success rate has still been good as well.
Yes, everything's been fairly stable, success, harvest, and the public satisfaction with this current season structure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Are there any other questions on Chapter 6?
This is probably a question for the Cheyenne Region Supervisor.
Cheyenne region,
Okay, Rick?
or Laramie, yeah.
Or Laramie. Sorry to diss old Albany County there. On page 6.6, I don't know if you have that, but area 60, which is between Cheyenne and Laramie, I'm trying to figure out these two seasons. You have 60 type 1 and 60 type 2. Can you explain what's going on there? I mean, they seem to be kind of the same license, but.
Sure. Madam President, members of the commission, Director Talbot. So in Area 60, we have a limited quota season, and we have two different license types, a Type 1 and a Type 2. And the Type 1 is valid for antlered deer on the national forest and any deer off the national forest. Then the 60 Type 2 is valid for any deer off national forest. And the reason we have that language in there is that the Pole Mountain unit, the small chunk of the Medicine Bow National Forest between Laramie and Cheyenne, is really the only public land place where folks can hunt. And so we limit the number of licenses that are available, that are valid on that small chunk of forest, and then have a more liberal number of licenses for the rest of the hunt area where it's predominantly private land.
So if you got a 60 type 2, you couldn't hunt on the national forest. You'd have to hunt on private land.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions in regard to Chapter 6, Commissioners?
I'd move we approve Chapter 6.
I'll second it.
Could I ask for a clarification on your motion? So that would be as amended, right?
Correct.
Correct?
Looks like Mr. Anselmi has something.
Do you have any blue slips for this, for chapter 6?
I do not, but thank you for asking, just in case. I appreciate that. All right, hearing none, I have a motion to approve Chapter 6 as amended and recommended, and a second, I believe, by Commissioner Price. We're good? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Scott, and you're on Chapter 7. And just an FYI, on Chapter 7, we actually do have two blue slips on this, so when we get to that.
Madam President, we still have the white-tailed deer portion
Oh, I'm
of Chapter
sorry.
6. I'm
We
sorry.
do.
Whoa.
I was getting all anxious about moving on.
Okay, so same format as previously presented. Here we see the changes in the limited quota licenses specifically for white-tailed deer. And we talk about whitetail specific limited quota licenses. Those are Type 3s and Type 8s. And as you can see here in the Casper region, we have quite a large increase, 1,475 of Type 8. Those are the antlerless license types, and those are specifically, again, targeted for hunt areas 1, 2, and 3 in the Black Hills area, where we're seeing a pronounced increase in whitetail densities. And if we look at then a statewide summary for these two license types that are specific for white-tailed deer, you'll see we're proposing a 1,970 increase. Last year's harvest topped 16,600, and success was above the 5-year average. 65% is about 5 percentage points higher than what we typically see for white-tailed deer. Success was up. And this 10-year trend also reflects both an increase in hunter success associated with our increasing whitetail densities, specifically in the Black Hills and some of the Sheridan region areas. Themes and concerns issues raised specifically for white-tailed deer during our public meetings. We continue to talk with the public about competition that whitetail and mule deer have with each other, and changes that we propose for 2016 regulation. We had 3 of them in the Laramie, Casper, and Lander regions. Increase for Laramie, increase of the Type 3 license type by 125. Again, in Casper, increase in the Type 8 licenses of 500. And in Lander, the 157, 170 Type 3 increase of 25, which we've already discussed previously. So So those are the specific changes proposed for the whitetail deer portion of Chapter 6.
Are there any questions?
President
Discussion?
Little?
Yes, Commissioner Culver.
So we're going from 2,000 to 3,500 type 8 in areas 1, 2, and 3. Now, originally, it was planned for an increase to 3,000. Now we've gone to 3,500. When was that decision made?
So that was we just had this discussion this week. It was brought to our attention that after further discussion amongst publics and the field managers, they felt like they could support another 500, adding another 500 to that overall quota, Commissioner Culver.
You missed the memo evidently.
Well, somewhere out there on the internet, Joe Sandrini is rolling his eyes because he probably told me about this. But, and your slide showed an increase of 1475, so there's a little discrepancy on that. So I was just curious. Now, having said that, I do think the numbers are there to support it, it appears to me, in those northern areas. You know, I support it. I was just
Okay.
curious.
Sure.
Other questions or discussion? Well, we could, hearing none, we could take a motion on the whitetail portion of Chapter 6 as amended. Or
I'd move.
so moved by Commissioner Crank,
I'll second that.
and we'll give this one to Commissioner Culver. How's that on the second? So, we, having voted on the mule deer portion, this is on the whitetail, and Commissioner Crank has made that motion as amended, seconded by Commissioner Culver. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Chapter 6 is over. Moving on to Chapter 7 and elk.
Madam President, Commissioners, Director Talbot, here's the proposed changes for Chapter 7 for the elk limited quota licenses. As you can see, again, similar to other regions, a variety of differing management strategies depending on how close the elk herd units are to the management goals, the population objectives. As you can note there in the upper right, the Cody region's proposing a reduction of 470, and similarly down in the lower right, the Pinedale region's proposing a reduction of 400. In both those instances, several of those elk herds are reaching the management objectives. The population level is closing in on the target level, and so therefore we don't need the elevated antlerless elk harvest at this time, and it's reflected in reductions, particularly in the Type 6 licenses, the cow-calf license. If we look at a statewide summary for the various license types, overall a net decrease of 1,465 limited quota licenses, and again, the bulk of that is coming in the 1,850 reduction for the cow-calf Type 6 license. In 2015, again, we had a fairly a good harvest, almost 25,000, slightly under there. Success was a little bit lower than the 5-year average. 42% success was reported for 2015. Our 5-year average runs around 45%. So if we look at a 10-year trend line here, you can see 2015 was slightly less than the previous 3 years where we had record number of elk harvested throughout the state, but still a very healthy harvest of elk on a statewide basis. Themes and concerns and issues listed by region. In the Jackson area, as we've had in the past, concern about elk distribution, particularly in the Jackson elk herd, movement out of the Grovant to the National Elk Refuge, causes managers challenges because we have sub-quotas for each of those areas. We have a sub-quota of 5,000 on the refuge and 3,500 in the Grovant, the 3 feed grounds in the native winter range in the Grovant. So when those elk leave the Grovant and come to the National Elk Refuge, results in us not achieving either sub-objective for those specific wintering areas. In addition to that, there is concern over lower elk numbers, specifically in the Fall Creek elk herd, areas 84 and 85. Those are immediately south of the town of Jackson. And we're seeing some suppressed calf recruitment. Therefore, we're going to have slightly shorter season lengths in that Fall Creek herd proposed for 2016. In the Sheridan area, there's interest in Area 37, both Type 6 and 9 seasons. Again, Area 37's on the Bighorn Mountain. And there's discussion on season length and areas open between those two license types. And if you refer to your sheet, the Area 6, again, is a cow-calf license, where the Area 9 is archery-only license. In Green River, public comments surrounding hunter crowding in the Sierra Madre elk areas 13, 15, and 21, and the overall reduction in elk numbers in both Sierra Madre and the West Green River herd units. Lander, public discussion revolved around the spikes excluded regulation. Spikes excluded will be proposed for the 3rd year in 2016. That was the commitment the field managers made when they agreed to try that management type for Area 67 and 68. And so at this point, this will be the 3rd year of that regulation type, and then the managers will evaluate the efficacy of that management. Changes that were made subsequent to public meetings. See here we have 4 regions listed. Cody, Area 47, Type 6, the season length was reduced by 7 days on Copper Mountain based on landowner input. In Area 64, the Type 7 permit, the opening date was moved 14 days earlier to facilitate more hunting opportunity. In the Pinedale region, there's a reduction proposed in general license seasons for areas 92, 94, 97, and 98, anywhere from 10 to 13 days, shorter season compared to last year, 2015 season. And then in the Hoback Basin areas 86 and 87, there's also a 9-day season length reduction proposed for those 2 general license areas. In Laramie, Area 114, Type 6, increased proposal to increase the license type by 50, and in the Green River for Area 32, Type 4, an proposed increase of season length by 13 days. Emerging and ongoing issues by region. There is emerging concern with wolf predation in the Hoback herd unit. Many of you probably saw the reports from this winter, specifically at the McNeil feed ground. Wolf predation by 1 pack of wolves was higher than has been documented in previous winters. And then there's also a concern amongst the hunting public as we get closer to the piney elk herd objective of the overall number of elk densities available to hunters in that herd unit. In the Green River area, areas 100, 118, 124, I should say both Green River and Lander, some of these hunt areas are shared. There is landowner concern over increasing elk numbers out in those, specifically in those 3 hunt areas. And then, as previously mentioned, in Sierra Madre and West Green River, sportsmen's concerns regarding the declining elk numbers as we quickly approach, or as we approach the population objectives specifically in those two areas. Up in Cody, brucellosis concerns over in the lower Grable River, Area 66. We continue to document the presence of brucellosis in elk in that area. And and not unique, but specifically in Cody, there's also the challenge of developing management recommendations and strategies to increase harvest in private land areas where elk are becoming quite abundant and hunting access is quite limited. And finally, Lander, maintaining adequate harvest to achieve objectives in the Wiggins Fork and Ferris elk herd units, emerging issues there. Continuing on with whoops. Okay, and that concludes that portion of my presentation. And what I'd like to do now is introduce Ms. Karen Frosson. She's the Snake River District Ranger for Grand Teton National Park, and she's going to present the Grand Teton National Park elk reduction.
Okay, so Scott, can I stop you for just a minute? I'm sorry to do that
Sure.
in the middle of a very nice introduction, but Commissioner Anselmi has a question.
I just got some questions about those shortened seasons, but I'm sure the Rangers come a long ways, and let her, no, are you planning on going back tonight?
No.
Okay, well,
Yes.
okay,
Well, what-
President Little.
Go ahead with your question. Why don't you go ahead
I
with your
saw,
question?
I saw a couple comments here about to lengthen the seasons, and then I see we're shortening them, but I've noticed myself how the weather, I don't know, you can have a bad snow year, but it seems like the last so many years, you know, the October 22nd, it's still summertime in a lot of places, and I don't know, like we shortened it from October 31st to October 22nd in a few of these places, and I don't know, I guess you'll evaluate that next year if you get a harvest, or if, I'm kind of one of the guys that likes to see good snow so I can, I don't know, that's why I like to, when they're migrating, then you get a little movement, but there was some comments in there about how the weather's changed, and sometimes the end of October, you know, it's,
Madam President, Commissioner Anselmi, specifically, is there hunch areas that we could address?
well, there's 102, and then there was another, those ones by Big Piney, I think you got them shortened to the middle of October, something, what was it, 90?
92 and 94 in the Piney elk herd unit. I can address that, and I'd ask Supervisor DeCecco to come and address the 102. So the Piney herd has chronically been above objective for many years, and we're finally reaching a point where we're getting very close to our target level. And so the managers had to decide what combination of management strategies to employ to continue to harvest, but reduce harvest as compared to historic levels. That's why you saw, so the strategy is a combination of fewer days in the general license season, and then a fairly significant reduction in the Type 6, the 350 less Type 6 licenses. So again, as we get closer to objective in some of these herds, we have to be responsive with our management actions, and so we just don't need that overall high level of cow harvest that a lot of areas have traditionally had, you know, for the last 10, 15 years. So it does seem, you know, it's very apparent to our hunting public when we make those type of changes, because they've been used to some very liberal opportunities, and we still want to provide, you know, adequate opportunity, but it's not as liberal in some instances as everyone's used to.
well, that's some of the comments, I guess, that I read, that people are used to and now you're scaling them back, so you're going to have some comments on that.
Right. And as far as Area 102, Mr. DeCecco can answer that. I'm not as familiar with that area.
And Steve, I've talked a little bit about this, I'm sorry. But I was rereading those comments the other night, and I saw some people talking about that 102.
Madam President and members of the commission, I believe Scott already kind of touched on that. As we've, in West Green River Elk, Area 102, 103, 104, 105, have approached and actually are at or even slightly below objective now, after about a 4 or 5 year period of increased late seasons and a significant number of cow-calf licenses. We basically had to truncate off some of the general license cow harvest, and that's what we've done. In addition, we've also drastically reduced the cow license quota on the limited quota type 6s. So essentially, we have the same any elk season that runs for 10 days, and then we truncated off that last 5 or 6 days of the season where a general license holder could still harvest antlerless elk, and that was in relation to where we're at with that population, and we're starting to back off of that cow elk harvest now.
All right, thank you. As long as we're on objective, we're gonna have public meetings on what, some herds we're doing some objective reviews. Aren't we gonna start here pretty soon?
Well,
Is one of those there?
our elk herds are all done right now, and in the Green River region, we're taking out Wyoming range mule deer this spring, as well as sublette antelope. And we reviewed West Green River elk objective about 3 or 4 years ago. And we had actually quite a testimony in this room about that from some of the landowners from the area.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next section, does anybody else have questions for regional supervisors or on this portion? Would you mind repeating your introduction because I had to rudely interrupt it?
Madam President, Commissioners, Director Talbot, it's my pleasure to introduce Karen Frost, and she's the Snake River District Ranger for Grand Teton National Park. She's here today to present the Grand Teton National Park's elk reduction program proposal for 2016.
Thank you, and I apologize, my voice is leaving me a little bit, but Madam President, members of the commission, Director Talbot, thanks for having me here. I'm not wearing the right colored shirt, but I appreciate being here. These are our objectives for the Jackson herd. It's 11,000, and the objective for elk on feed on the elk refuge is 5,000. Excuse me, Grand Teton bull and cow ratio, we have at 35 bulls per 100 cows. This is the area that our park biologists flew over a two-day period this summer, and the total of elk that they counted was 672, which was about 400 less than usual. So we suspect that the majority of the elk were south of where they were flying. But we flew in areas which are open visibility because of being in sagebrush and historically known for high density of elk. I guess I'm technologically challenged there, so sorry about this. I think the Jackson herd presently is at objective, and as Scott mentioned, the number of elk on feed at this present time is above objective. They counted 7,300 elk on the elk refuge this winter, and then the bull ratio at this point in time in Grand Teton is below excuse me, below objective. So consequently, at this time, bull harvest is not recommended in Grand Teton for 2016. The season's length and is pretty much, it's not much different than 2015. The season for Hunt Area 75 will begin October 22nd and go till December 11th. and we'll be issuing 125 Type 4 and 500 Type 6 permits, which is 25 less than we did the year before. So a total of 625 permits will be issued. And last year, the harvest of elk was 143. So this, next year, we propose to keep the river bottom between Dead Man's Bar and Ditch Creek closed because of the potential of grizzly bear and hunter conflict. It's an area that is high in vegetation and high in bear activity. But we are going to continue to keep the area around Grovant River open. Excuse me. We're going to continue with the limit possession of ammunition to 7 cartridges daily. Limit to 1 shot fired at a running group of elk to hopefully decrease the potential of wounding loss. We will continue to require non-lead ammunition to hopefully decrease in the contamination of the gut piles that bald eagles and other scavengers eat on. And like I said, the Snake River bottom from Dead Man's Bar to Ditch Creek will be closed to hunting. And that's it. Sorry, I went on to moose.
Questions for Karen? Thank you very much for your presentation, certainly appreciated. We do have actually 2 blue slips, so if I may, we'll go ahead. Carlton Lower, is that right? Yes, ma'am. Oh, thank goodness, I'm batting, outfitter, and you're here to speak on this particular chapter.
Madam President, Commissioners, Director Talbert, thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Carlton Lower. I am an outfitter in the Jackson and Bondurant areas, and I would like to specifically comment on the areas of 84 and 92 and those season changes. I am in support of the changes that are being made and cutting back on the cow licenses, the cow-calf harvest, just due to the fact that the wolf activity in that area in both areas is really off the charts. I mean, I also work with the feeder at the Camp Creek feed ground during the wintertime, and we're experiencing, it might not show this year, but Horse Creek and Camp Creek have pressure daily from packs of wolves. Everybody's seen what happened in Bondurant this spring. It continues to go on. To specifically address Area 92, the North Piney herd unit is now below the objective level by a couple hundred elk. That was one of the most liberal seasons last year for general harvest of cow, antlerless elk on a general tag for length. It's an area that can get quite a bit of snow. We actually had to take some hunters this past year on some private land on snow machines to try and fill their tags. So I think my issue with the general license going as long as it goes for cow elk is we don't know how many, you don't really get a good feel of how many elk are taken on that license. And it can open up for I think a big decline in the population of a herd unit that is now underneath the objective by a couple hundred. So I'd like to thank Brad and Brad Hovengay and Doug Rumeyer for their open lines of communication. It's a pleasure to work with them in the Jackson office, and I hope we can continue that relationship. So, thank you.
Any questions for Carlton?
Yes, Carlton, are you agreeable to that Area 92 where they've cut it from 23 to 10 days?
Commissioner Price, my opinion on that 92, on the 92 tag is, I know there's a lot of people that like that hunting opportunity. A lot of resident hunters like that hunting opportunity. It's already a short bull season in that area. I feel that having the type 6 tag is a good management tool for the cow elk, where the general tag can, I think it can get a little out of hand, especially on a good snow year. So.
Well, that's what I gathered from what you said, that if everybody piled in there on that, even a 10-day season, it may get out of hand, depending on the weather.
Correct.
On that. But are you comfortable with cutting that down to just 10 days, basically?
I am comfortable. Actually, what we had proposed to Gary Freilich is to cut that general cow elk harvest, that general cow elk license off at the 31st when the bull license ended. But he didn't want to pull it all the way back from November 23rd to October 31st. But I'm okay with it going to with that season to November 10th. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we have, thank you very much, Carlton, really appreciate it. So we also have Dustin Child, who is an outfitter as well.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, Director Talbot, thanks for the opportunity to get up and speak. And I'd like to just kind of echo, actually Carlton kind of stole my thunder, but just echo a lot of what Carlton said. I also outfit in that area, in the Jackson area. We run a couple of pack-in wilderness camps in the Grovant Wilderness, and I also, that's in Hunt Area 84. It was a short time ago that I was here at the commission, and there was a very liberal season in Hunt Area 84 and Area 85. There was upwards of 600 Type 6 cow tags. The general season mirrored what actually Area 92 did in 2015. You know, there's been a lot of discussion with the department and me about Area 84. You know, a few short years ago, like I was saying, possibly 2010 and 11, if you look back, it was resembled what 2015 showed in the season in Area 92. Now, if you look at Area 84, the season's drastically reduced. We're down to 25 Type 6 cow tags. My opinion, there should be none. But I'm in agreement with what the department has proposed. In my camps, just to give you a little bit of history of my camps that I generally took 16 to 18 clients out of. This year I'm taking 4. I have a stomach ache about the, you know, a gut ache when the hunters call me and tell me that they draw their tags, and I find out because I know what I'm faced with. I'm still receiving emails from hunters in 2015 that were upset with their hunts, where, you know, prior to that, we got emails with praise and you know, on the area. I am in agreement with Chapter 7 as proposed for areas 84 and 92. I commend the department, especially Brad Hovengay and biologist Doug Brimmeyer, along with Gary Freilich, for looking at that, realizing what is going on. The wolf depredation, as Carlton said, I know I'm just beating the same drum that you've heard, but it is amazing. We've gone from seeing, healthy elk herds. Now I give wolf tours is pretty much what I do with my clients. It's really sad. I also have 2 young boys. They're my highest powered clients. They're ages 13 and 12. My oldest boy was able to harvest an elk last year. He was not able to harvest one in the wilderness area of 84. We luckily were able to go down to Big Piney, Area 92, and get some elk. If there's not a change, and it's out of your guys' hands, if something's not changed with this wolf, it's only a matter of time before, to answer Commissioner Anselmi's question, I too like to see, a good season, but that we're going to be forced, this department is going to be forced to shorten these seasons in the Jackson, Big Piney, Pinedale area to, even more more conservative. They're going to be forced to shorten these seasons to provide my clients, the general hunters, my boys with an opportunity to hunt elk. I'm scared to death that my boys will not have the opportunity to hunt elk as I had growing up in the great state of Wyoming. But I'd just like to go on the record as supporting the commission, as supporting the department, and I am glad that they are shortening that season, especially in Area 92. As Carlton said, that population was driven down 800 animals. It's now below objective. And if they would not have reduced those type 6 tags, shortened that general season, as Commissioner Price asked, if they would not do that, next year it would be driven down, beyond recovery. That elk herd in that area, the Gros Ventre, the Teton Wilderness, that entire elk herd is on the edge of the cliff, and it's about ready to fall over past the point of recovery. But thank you for your time.
Questions for Mr. Child? Yes, Commissioner Rael.
Mr. Childs, in your opinion, you guys are the boots on the ground besides the biologists and the science and behind the elk herds, the progress or the digress. What's your opinion? Why are they going the other way? In a nutshell, what is your strongest opinion on what's going on?
It's the wolves, Commissioner.
That was for the record, thank you.
Yes, the wolf. In 2014, on my camp, I sat on a ridge between Little Horse and Main Horse Creek. I sat on a ridge. I could hear a pack of wolves howling behind me, and I was in my spot scope about a mile from my camp. I counted a pack of 18 wolves about a mile from my camp. One of my guides got back to camp that night. We're all sad. Hunters are sad. Guides are sad. We're kicking the dirt. And I told him, I said, there's 18, a pack of 18 just moved in by the pond. My client said, or my other guide, he said, I saw 7 over on Eagle Point. So there was 25 wolves in that area. Now, that was in 2014. It was probably October 10th of 2014. But that is the reason, is solely the wolf.
I appreciate your guys' hard work. Part of our revenue, a lot of our revenue comes from non-resident sales along with residents. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking. Quick question, sort of on the side, for the Bighorn area, both sides of the mountain. From the regional directors, are we going to hit those just as hard this year with test kits and people on the ground to try to make sure we're checking for brucellosis during hunting season?
Madam President, yes, our surveillance for brucellosis will continue as it has in the past for the Bighorn Mountains.
Okay, because I appreciate all that extra work that's gone on up there, and it's kind of on the side. All right, commissioners, is there any other discussion? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion regarding Chapter 7 as proposed. Commissioner Price.
I make the motion that we accept Chapter 7 as proposed.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept from Commissioner Price and a second from Commissioner Rael. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. And before we start on with moose, bighorn sheep, I'm sorry, and mountain goat, let us take a 10-minute break, if that would be all right, and we will begin sharply at 3:10. Good.
It can destroy our wildlife herds.
25 licenses. So
I'm the mayor shell of my former self.
ultimately. I'm not voting unless I have to, but, oh, here we go. No?
I'll go gather.
Thanks.
Whack that gavel.
Yeah, I should have been louder, shouldn't I? Well, the IT tells me not to hit it too loud because they can hear it in this. I don't care.
You know what?
They've got,
Yeah.
I don't think we have a quorum.
Whack it.
go ahead, please, you're fine.
Madam President, Commissioners, I'd like to continue with Chapter 8, which is our moose regulation. So for the 2016 proposal for limited quota moose licenses, as you can see here, many regions have no change, and those that are proposing changes are some slight reductions. In the Pinedale area, we're proposing our biggest reduction of 20, 10 type 1s, 10 type 4s. Simply on a statewide basis, the proposal is to reduce overall moose licenses by 35, 15 type 1s and 20 type 4s. For 2015, we had a harvest of 365 moose with an average success of 89%, which is right at the 5-year average for success. And as you've probably seen before, the 10-year trend line continues to decline for overall moose harvest. As you can see, back in the mid-2000s, we were harvesting over 600 moose, and we're now, as of last year, down below 400, right around 365. So not surprising, the common themes and issues, concerns raised, not only in Cody, but statewide, is just the overall density of moose in the state. Specifically in Cody, as you probably saw in your comment letters, stakeholders along the Wood River in Hunt Area 9 are concerned about moose harvest. We will continue to meet with those stakeholders and share the information that we have with them. But for Hunt Area 9, we are meeting our management objectives, and we feel that the very conservative harvest of the issuance of 5 tags for that hunt area is appropriate for the entire herd unit. There were no changes based on our public meetings. We had already made many of the changes, all of the changes that you saw. And for emerging and ongoing issues, specifically north of Jackson, there is still concern about low moose densities in many of those historic winter ranges in the Jackson region. So with that, Madam President and Commissioners, that's all I have to present on Chapter 8, and I'd stand for any questions you may have.
Well, I actually have a question, and Commissioner Price, I'm kind of wondering if you can help me with this. Is, or one of the regional supervisors, is Area 9 the region that we kind of made a large reduction about 3 years ago in the herd management numbers?
Area 9?
Was that it?
Area 9 is kind of way up here in the, kind of.
Was it 6?
Not quite Cody, but Matisse type area.
Okay, so it was more in your area, I think. Is that 6?
That's not my area, that's
No, I meant around where you live. Where's?
25's where I live, 25, 24. Most of my area is in 25, 24, and then all down to the south.
Oh, okay, so that's where we made the,
There, and what we did, I think, there, this is a couple of years ago when I asked to move the objective from 12 to 1,500.
right. You and I both, yeah.
Yeah, and we did that, at the time, we knew it wasn't good attainable, but quite a few years ago, I mean, we were 2,500 head, that's where the objective was, and we were taking a lot of moose out of that area. And then, what really happened, and this is, I'm gonna have to say a personal opinion, we got that Daniel Packer running that western range, and it pretty well flattened those moose. My wife and I both got permits in 1 year for that area 25 and up along the Wyoming range. And I own land up in there. And every one of those drainages used to have a cow, moose, and a calf in it. I mean, there's little creeks. There's Cottonwood Creek and Little Cottonwood Creek and Little Cottonwood, Beecher Creek, all of them there. And we were looking, my wife got a cow permit. I don't know if got a cow permit, and maybe I just spoke with this where everybody could hear it, but we had to look hard to find a cow moose for her. And usually you could just go kick one out of the bushes about anywhere. And I had to look hard up in there. I never found anything there. I finally ended up going on to one of the neighbors' places and getting my bull for me.
So I guess my question is, and I was a little messed up on the area, I couldn't remember where we had done that, so I appreciate you straightening me out. I assume we're not maybe I don't want to jump to the conclusion we're no better, but have any increase in numbers? We did that because we couldn't get near objective at that point.
Madam President, you're referring specifically to the sublet moose herd?
Right.
Yes.
When we changed the objective?
Remember back when
Yes,
they
ma'am.
wanted to go to 1,200 and we kept it at 1,500 and it was still like a 50% reduction or something? It was.
Correct.
I just wondered how they were doing. We were on the subject and I just had a chance to ask.
Madam President, absolutely. So it appears that herd is definitely not growing, but is more static over the last few years. So.
Okay. I wanted to, okay. And that's right, okay, so that's why we went down then there. I was just messed up on my areas. Thank you. I get it now.
I would comment on one thing there. And I don't know how the wolves over in Hoback are going to do, but I've been seeing moose. In fact, I was over there day before yesterday in Fisherman Creek, and there's moose in there again. There for a number of years, you couldn't see a moose in there, and it used to have a lot of them. So maybe a little bit of growth.
Okay, any other questions or Commissioner Crank?
A comment, Madam President. Director Talbot once gave me an editorial that Jack O'Connor wrote, and it's hilarious. If you haven't read it, I can send it to you. But basically, he was commenting on how everyone, including his barber and the guy who works on his car, are wildlife management experts. They know more about the status of the wildlife herds than these guys who got college degrees and are out there every day and actually studying and doing population counts, but they knew a lot. So I constantly resist that temptation. So with that said, I think in the next year or so, we need to seriously consider not hunting cow moose in any areas where we have grizzlies or wolves. Until the federal government you know, and the court system gives us the authority to effectively manage those two top-of-the-line predators, which I believe kill the heck out of our moose, particularly the calf recruitment and the calves, then I think we need to seriously think about stopping cow moose hunting. You know, in my mind, you hunt females to control population. And we don't have a population problem where we have too many moose, except maybe in Area 1, where you don't have a significant grizzly bear or wolf population, and then down in my neck of the woods, 38 and 41, where you don't have wolves or grizzly bears as far as I know. So pretty darn quick, we should quit killing cows, because I don't see the purpose of it. It'll probably be horribly unpopular with the public, but if it comes down to protecting our moose herd and being unpopular with the public, I'll protect the moose herd. So I just, as we go forward to next year, at least as one commissioner, I think you need to seriously think about no more cow, except in areas where you don't have large numbers of grizzly bears and wolves, because they're going to wipe out the calf crop every year.
How often, when will we revisit this season setting again for moose? Is this 2-year time or 3-year?
Madam President, Commissioner Price, we will review Chapter 8 annually, every year.
We're going to do it annually. It's not like the, okay.
Are you talking about herd objectives? Charles?
Well, license or season setting.
Yeah, every year.
There. Okay, this is an annual thing for this, right here. Okay, that's where I got mixed up a little bit then. Okay, good.
Director Talbot.
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, there has been a lot of time and effort and significant financial investment in studying moose populations in northwest Wyoming over the last 10 years, and perhaps if it would be the commission's desire that sometime in the next couple meetings we could present to you a moose management overview and let inform the commission and the public of the work that we have done, what we've seen, and we could further provide Commissioner Crank some additional answers on antlerless moose hunting and those types of issues.
I think that'd be a great idea. Thank you very much for the offer. Are there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I would request a motion on Chapter 8 recommendations from the department.
I make the motion that we accept it as proposed.
Commissioner Price makes the motion to accept as proposed. Do I hear a second?
I second.
And Commissioner Rael seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please nay. Motion carries and passes.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. The next regulation is Chapter 9, bighorn sheep. Here is our proposals for 2016. We have a modest increases in most regions, one or two. In Cody, we're actually looking at 3. 2 of those would be for the Devil's Canyon hunt area. It's been talked about here previously. And for these others, for example, Pinedale, we're going to open up Hunt Area 24 for bighorn sheep hunting for the first time in several years. And down in the Laramie region, Hunt Areas 18 and 21 on the alternating on-off cycle. This year, we're going to, those two combined areas will be open with 2 permits. Again, the statewide change would be an addition of 8 bighorn sheep tags for the state of Wyoming. Last year's harvest topped out at 154 with 80% hunter success, right at the 5-year average. And if you look at what's happened with our 10-year harvest trends for bighorn sheep since peaks in 2010 and 2012, you can see we had some reductions in overall sheep harvest, and primarily this would be attributed to the overall loss of sheep in Hunt Area 5 and our significant reduction of permits in Hunt Area 5 over the past 3 years. So again, overall, a sheep harvest of 154, down from a high of over 200 back in 2012. Whoops. Sorry. There were no major issues raised at the public meetings. And that's what I have to present for Chapter 9, an increase of 8 statewide.
Did you have more on the goats?
I do, for Chapter 9.
I mean, unless somebody, do you have any specific questions in reference to bighorn sheep, commissioners? Because what I was thinking, if it was okay with you, could we just go ahead and do the mountain goat 2, and then we could just
Madam President, absolutely.
approve the chapter in its entirety?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So for mountain goat, we're going to, for 2016, we're proposing to add 8 total licenses for Hunt Area 3, Type 2. Those licenses would be valid for the entire month of October. The strategy behind this proposal would be to allow more hunting opportunity in the area where we have mountain goat. It appears solid mountain goat numbers, and we could allow this hunting without interfering. If we made it valid for the month of October, this hunt would not interfere with the traditional bighorn sheep hunting. That's the only increase we're proposing for mountain goats, would be the Area 3 Type 2. Last year's harvest was 31 with 100% success, so every license holder actually harvested. Similar to bighorn sheep, there were no major issues raised at the public meetings regarding mountain goat. So with that, Madam President, that's all I have for both bighorn sheep and mountain goats.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or discussion? Well, hearing none, then I would ask for a motion on the entire Chapter 9, which includes both bighorn sheep and mountain goat. Commissioner Price.
I make the motion we accept this Chapters 8 and 9 as proposed.
Commissioner Price has made a motion that we accept Chapter 9 as proposed. Second?
Second.
Commissioner Anselmi seconds. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
Madam President, it appears the PowerPoint is out of order from your notebook. I could switch to Chapter 11 if you'd like.
I think that it is easier for us to get there in our notebook than it is for you to have to fast forward in a PowerPoint and come back. So I think we will move on, everyone, to Chapter 15, which is the wild bison. Any questions on that? Are we good? Okay, we're good.
My apologies. So Chapter 15, the wild bison recreational hunting season proposal. Let me quickly go through. So harvest this past year, again, exceeded 200. As you can see here, for the last 4 years now, we've actually exceeded a total harvest of over 200. For 2015, we did achieve a decent cow harvest of 159 with 47 bulls being taken in the Jackson recreational bison hunt. Changes that we're proposing for 2016 from 2015 would be a slight increase in the Type 1 licenses from 40 to 50. Area 2 is the Jackson bison area. a reduction of type 4, the cow-calf license from 265 to 245. And then the third one is the opportunity to allow season extension or allow hunting from January 11th through January 31st on the National Elk Refuge, providing the supplemental feeding program has not been initiated. So again, if we have a mild winter where they're not actually feeding both the elk and bison, we're proposing to have an extension of the season throughout the remainder of January to help achieve our harvest objectives. Part of the reason is just the difficulty of harvesting the female calf bison is in areas that are not open for the take of the for the bison during the recreational hunt. And so we would propose that item number 3 up there for your consideration to help achieve our harvest objectives. Which, as you see under number 3, our objective is 500 bison in the Jackson bison herd. So with that, those are the 3 proposed changes for the 2016 wild bison recreational hunt.
So Scott, you don't mean really extending the season by how I read this. You just mean adding a type of license. Am I correct?
Madam President, no, it would be, both license types would be valid.
Oh, I see what you're doing. I see. Okay, I'm sorry. I see what you're doing. Adding, okay. I see it. I understand. All right, commissioners, do you have any questions?
President Little?
Yes, Commissioner Anselmi.
When did they start feeding on the refuge this year?
January 30th.
We talked about this last night, but it was a long night. And when did we start feeding on our feed grounds?
So typically, first of the year is kind of an average start date for instance, in the Grovon area. Somewhere between Christmas and the first of the year, typically.
Okay, this is different. Do you have any buffalo over there by Cody? At one time there was buffalo. There's any buffalo over there now or no? This Clark's Fork or whatever?
Come down the North Fork.
Not in the numbers that we need to provide harvest opportunities at this point. So all of the harvest is coming out of Area 2, which is the Jackson.
Because when we first started this years ago, you could hunt in Cody, or there was a permit for Cody and there was a permit for Jackson or something.
Correct.
But there's no permits in Cody.
Not at the present time.
How many buffalo are over there?
Well, and I'll let Mr. Tim Woolley come up and address this from the Cody region, but typically my understanding is there's only, we only provide the recreational hunt when there's a large number of bison that move out of the Yellowstone Park, come down the North Fork corridor, and actually, I can't think of what the number is right now, so Tim, could you address that?
15 bison. Yeah, Madam President, Director Talbot, Commission members, we created a new Hunt Area 3 along the North Fork corridor. In the past, we used to have a list of hunters that we could call on when our numbers got to where we were going to allow some harvest. What that was is based on our brucellosis management action plan. When we get about 15 bison along that corridor, then we would call hunters to allow them to harvest the extra. That happened back in 1996. Well, what we did, now that there's a drawing, we created a new hunt area so that when we need to harvest some bison along there, we could offer licenses. And it looks like we're getting around that 15, so probably next year we're looking at having a harvest of probably about 5.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Commissioner
Price.
President, Little, as I understand this, you talked about extending the season, and that's what these are, like January 11th, January 31st. Extending the season. on
Madam
that?
President, Commissioner Price, that is correct. That would be the proposed
Depending on that their elk feeding has not started.
correct. Providing there is no supplemental feeding actively ongoing, then we would provide hunting opportunity during that time frame. Yes.
Okay. And I guess maybe I didn't read this completely right, but if they started feeding like, say, mid-January or something on the National Elk Refuge, then that would shut this down.
Correct, sir.
Okay. So I understood that correctly. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'd call for a motion on Chapter 15.
Wake up and make a motion, quick.
I so move.
I'll second it.
All right. The Chapter 15, we have a motion from Commissioner Crank to approve as proposed, and a second from Commissioner Price. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Sorry.
I knew you were just thinking.
Motion carries. I'll wait and see what you have next.
I'm sorry,
That's all
Madam
right.
President. We're back to
Okay.
Chapter 11 now, the upland game bird small game proposal.
Okay, so I have a quick question for the commissioners on this one. Since we have some different species in small game, is there any one of these that you guys feel strongly about pulling out and having a major discussion about singly, or can we let him run through them all to the end and then consider it? And we can still pull one out then if you come up with a thought, but would I be okay to let him run? Okay, well, like the little cottontail rabbit at the end, you can run.
Madam President, Commissioners, thank you. Chapter 11, as you remember, several years ago, we combined multiple species into one regulation, and that's why we have, as you see, these 6 or 7 species in front of you today. For sage grouse, proposed changes from 2015 would be slight adjustments to the opening date, and we'll have these every year. Since we traditionally open this season on the 3rd weekend in September, we just have to do a little calendar adjustment every year for both Hunt Area 1 and Hunt Area 4. Hunt Area 1 will be a season of 14 days, Hunt Area 4 season of 3 days. There were no major issues raised during our public meetings. For blue and rough grouse, we have no proposed changes for 2016. No changes from the 2015 regulation, and we did not receive any public issues. No issues were raised by the public for this species, or these 2 species either. Sharp-tailed grouse, checker partridge, gray partridge, and small game. I just combined all these. Again, we're not proposing any changes, and there were no major issues raised amongst our publics. For Chapter 11 pheasant, again, similar to sage grouse, we have to make, every year we have to make slight adjustments to the calendar, to account for the calendar day, with the traditional Saturday opener in November. Other than that, there are no significant changes recommended for pheasants, and there were no major issues raised by our publics during the meetings. And that is it for the Chapter 11 species. Yeah, I stand for questions.
Did we do the rabbits?
I'm sorry, yes, ma'am. Madam President, it was just combined in with small game, I just lumped into this summary.
Okay, all right, gotcha. I
Again,
just
no
didn't hear-
changes, no changes.
No changes, so, okay. Yeah, discussion or questions? Commissioner Price?
I'm just going to say this, but it seems like the pheasant farms have worked real well this year. I haven't heard any news reports on them.
Madam President, Commissioner Price, yes, I would agree with that. Everything seemed to be operating real well, and
That's just a, curiosity. Having said that, I'll make the motion, we accept these this section, chapter 11, as proposed by Scott.
Okay,
I will second that.
okay, so moved by Commissioner Price to accept Chapter 11 regulations and seconded by Commissioner Rael. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Thank you, being sage grouse. I look for it first, every time. Yeah, no, I wasn't paying attention.
Madam President, Commissioners, Director Talbot, if I could, that Chapter 14 is, consists of our migratory game bird hunting seasons and our light goose conservation order. And this is a change from last year. And I'll explain this here. So typically, or historically now, the federal framework, what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would provide to us as our hunting opportunities, would always come to us later in the year and would never coincide with this meeting so that we could actually set a migratory game bird season at this time. For 2016, what they've enacted is they're going to base the federal framework, i.e., how many days we're allowed to hunt waterfowl. They're going to base that decision on the last year's data, which allows all states, not just Wyoming, but all states, to set their seasons during the normal season-setting process with other species. What this does for us, then it eliminates the need for an emergency rule we'd always have to have signed in August because of the late arrival of the federal framework to the states. Also now, then this allows us to combine former chapters 39 and 48 into one regulation, similar to what we did with the upland and small game several years ago. So now everything is rolled into chapter 14, and we've titled this, migratory game bird and light goose conservation order. So changes from the 2015 season, besides what I've just offered, there were some slight season modifications, again, to allow for opening and closing dates on weekends. And I threw in here, since we keep talking about federal frameworks, what does that actually mean? So we have two flyways in the state of Wyoming. We have the Pacific Flyway over on the western side of the state. The rest of the state then is encompassed by the Central Flyway. The federal framework proposal for this year is what they call the Liberal Hunting Package. And with that, you see here, it gives us a menu of days that we have to hunt both ducks and dark geese. So for the Pacific Flyway under the Liberal Package, we'll get 107 days for duck hunting. In the Central Flyway, that Liberal Package allows 97 days for ducks. And then for both flyways, 107 days under the Liberal Package for the hunting of dark geese. So when you hear Liberal Package, it means something a little bit different for different flyways. And since our state has two flyways, it gets a little confusing at times. The other change from 2015 is a small decrease in the sandhill crane permit for area 6. We're going to reduce that by 5 compared to last year's proposals. And this comes about as Fish and Wildlife Service had a small error when they determined the allowable harvest for the state. We have, and to achieve that allowable harvest, we have to have a slight reduction of 5 permits to stay in line with what Fish and Wildlife Service has allowed us to harvest on the sandhill crane. We did not receive any major issues, written comments, or input from at our public meetings. And with that, I will stand to answer any questions.
Questions? Commissioner Anselmi.
Just real quick. So the cranes is the same as last year, then you got like 80 cranes up in Farson, that's what it was last year too, I guess, huh? These numbers for their different hunt areas, that's the same as last year, except one was reduced by 5 or 6 or whatever you said.
Madam President, Commissioner Anselmi, that's correct. It's just a slight adjustment there. So, yeah, and if you'd like, we do have our new waterfowl biologist, Mr. Nate Huck here. He could explain the intricacies of this allowable harvest if you'd like to talk more about sandhill cranes.
I'm sure the other commissioners want to hear it, but that's fine, I don't want to hear it, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we have the time, and we have the expert here.
Okay.
He can talk.
Nate, would you address the commission about the sandhill crane issue?
Absolutely. Madam President, Commissioner Anselmi. Basically, we actually have an increase from last year in all the hunt areas. We get
In terms of looking, we'll do them separate. Motion carries, and so we are then going to move to discussion on chapter, this would be under the tab Early Migratory, Chapter 39, and the next one, which is Light Goose, Chapter 48. And the request by the department is to repeal both of those chapters.
President Little?
I would take any discussion.
I will-
Would you like to speak to those first? I'm sorry, Scott.
Madam President, no, you covered it exactly. Since it's now encompassed in Chapter 14, we would request the repeal of those two chapters.
Okay, thank you. And now Commissioner Culver.
I will make the motion that we repeal 39 and 48.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
So we have it made, motion to repeal 39 and 48 by Commissioner Culver and a second by Commissioner Rael. So all those in favor of repealing both Chapter 39 and 48, please signify by saying aye.
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 And all those opposed signify by nay. Motion carries. Those are done. Thank you very much for.
Madam President, Commissioners, Director Talbot, the last regulation of the day is Chapter 20, our wild turkey regulation. And this regulation covers both fall of 2016 and spring of 2017. I put the map of the hunt areas up, configuration of statewide hunt areas, reduced multiple areas into 5, as depicted on the map here. And you can see on the left-hand side there, we have both the fall and the spring, fall of 2016 and the spring of 2017 proposals. The only proposed changes, again, similar to pheasants and sage grouse, would be areas 1 and 4 for the spring of 2017 season. Again, we need to adjust dates to coincide with the second Saturday in April opener. Other than that, there is no proposed changes for the remainder of the hunt areas for either fall of 2016 or spring of 2017. During public meetings, we received no major issues to discuss, and other than the changes I just described, there are no significant changes to this regulation. With that, I would stand for questions.
So I have a question. So on Hunt Area 3, just, or question, comment, I don't know, but I just wondered how the region, what the region had heard in terms of numbers that we are being overrun with turkeys. And I don't know whether, I mean, maybe you don't sell enough of these licenses now. I don't know that it is worth raising the number. Maybe you never sell all 300 or whatever, or no, yeah, 300. But
We're fortunate to have Supervisor Joe Gilbert here that would be happy to address your question for the last time.
Thanks. Commissioner Little, in addition to a general wild turkey season in the spring, we have that Area 3, Type 3 license, which it did sell out this year. It typically does sell out every year. In the fall, we have those additional Type 3 licenses as well, and they typically do not sell. Folks are involved in other activities in the fall, and turkey hunting just doesn't seem to be high on their list of priorities. But the way that's set up is a person can have up to 3 licenses in Hunt Area 3, so you could have a general and then 2 of those Type 3s, or buy 3 of the Type 3s if you were so inclined. But we do have a lot of turkeys in Area 3, particularly in Sheridan County and in Johnson County, and most of them are on private land, and access is tightly controlled. And we try to direct folks, if we have a landowner call in that's experiencing problems, we do try to direct some harvest and hunters their way. Well, I've got a 15-year-old daughter or niece that's looking for a place, so I'll give you a call.
Yeah, swing them our way. Well, okay, I just wanted to comment that it's outrageous out in our area anymore. Yeah. And we have some concerns about them, because actually the neighbor, don't know for sure, but can, got coccidiosis this year in his calves, so. And that can come from turkey, so.
Yeah.
So just thought I'd throw out there that if you thought about, if you weren't, if you were selling out, you could increase numbers, and we would be okay with that.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's something, it didn't come up through the public meeting process, and we just didn't actually consider it among ourselves, increasing that number. But that certainly could be done.
Okay. Not worth making a change today. I'm not going to worry about it, but. Yeah. Okay, anybody else have any discussion or questions? If not, I would entertain a motion on Chapter 20 as proposed.
President, Little, I make the motion that we accept the Wild Turkey Chapter 20 as proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Price.
Second.
And thank you, Commissioner Anselmi, for seconding that. So we have a motion on Chapter 20 to accept as proposed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Woo-hoo!
Thank you, Madam President.
We're done.
We're done.
Awesome.
What's the joke?
Do I win a prize? Awesome. Okay, so that is what we have on the agenda today. We now should take time to have a call to the public, if anybody would like to speak. Okay. Director Talbot, the floor is yours.
Madam President, members of the commission, please recall tonight at 5:30 at the Casper Regional Office, we have the dedication to the department's historical collection in name of Jay Lawson, who was our late Chief of Wildlife. And I would just remind the commissioners and folks that they're welcome to attend that.
What did you say, 5:30? 5:30.
Thank you very much. Hearing nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd move that
President
way.
Little, I make the motion.
Look up Commissioner Kirk. So he beat you. Would you mind seconding it?
Oh, I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.